Yes, AMC closed last Friday really flat. And if you look at last week, we are still down more than 4%, especially given the market circumstances that we saw this last week and the week before that with what is happening in China, what is happening here in the economy in the US, the debt ceiling with so much risk and the whole inflation thing. It wasn't an easy week. It wasn't a week where AMC could just, go 25% up. But there is something really interesting because when you see some of the mainstream media starting to talk about AMC potentially going bananas, you know there is something up. I'm gonna go through that in this video, especially looking at both the technical and the fundamentals, which I believe a lot of us into the apes community do not usually look at that, even though it's a huge catalyst for the short squeeze also, in the near future. So let's get into the chart and see exactly what I'm talking about. First of all, if you look at where AMC is sitting right now around the 40 flat, well, in the last year, since January, this is the yearly chart here, you will see that it kind of reminds us of what happened when the stock was still between, battling with the $10 mark, when everybody was like, man, will this thing even ever go back to 12? I remember seeing on the comment section then, some of the viewers saying, I was saying how AMC can go all the way up to 25 again and even go to 50. People were like, yeah, man, you can talk, but let us go first to 12 and then we can talk afterwards. And then here we are sitting at 40. So look how many time, look at how many trading sessions it took for AMC to get outside of the $9-10, even though at a point it went all the way up to 14 and came straight back up. And then from that point, we were just trading sideways from March to May. So that way, 2 months, 2 full months where, it was barely moving. And people were like, man, will this thing ever go up again? And here we are. So, and the reason behind what happened here is the shorts who took this from 20 at 25, brought it all the way down every time the retail and some of the professionals were buying up. They were buying up, just, scooping everything. And at the point, it came all the way to this $10 mark where it was really difficult. It was hard for the short sellers to cover. Why? Because most of the apes coming from the 5, the 6, the 7, even those were at the 20s were averaging down in order to have some kind of lower possible average cost per share. And that's why it was, difficult for the shorts to bring this down to 10 because there was a strong buying pressure, and most importantly, people holding. So at this point, they figure, well, if they cannot bring it down, well, they will either switch positions. That's why when you look at the 13F filing from now, you will see that some of the short sellers, like even Citadel, at this point were owning almost 1 million shares of AMC on the buy side because, it was difficult. So they had to, some of the newcomers, people who bought here around 25, had to let it go because it wasn't going anywhere, no matter how they could try to drag it down. And I feel like based on where we were on the 52, this is kind of what we are experiencing now, because when you really look at where we were on the last month, on the last 5 days, it's barely sitting there at the 40. It's sitting barely there at the 40. It will come back up after hours, and even when at the opening it will pop to maybe 42, 41.50, it will still close below around that 40. When you look at the short interest, it is at the highest possible so far, I think 20.18%. Even though that is just an estimate, it's just an estimate because nobody can tell you how many naked shorts, how many synthetics are out there. We covered that so many times that I think it's just a repeat. So that being said, if you take that into consideration, we may be sitting on 1 billion shares here. And the fact that when you look at the volume, the trading volume on Friday and on the last weeks, we were just barely moving below, above the 3 months average, which is, I think, 80 to 90 million. But today, the volume, on last Friday, the volume was 30 million. 30 million shares traded. I mean, this is half the volume we saw around the average being 60 to 80. That tells you that with a volume so low, even lower than the half of the average volume on AMC, well, they can barely bring it down to even a percent on the red. What was the last time AMC traded down 25% on the red or even 15% on the red? But I remember 3, 4, 6 months ago, this was pretty much every single week. So with all the manipulation tactics and tricks from naked shorts to synthetics to HFT to dark pools to ETFs to bonds, converting to stocks, man, there are so many possibilities that could bring this down to whatever price they want it. But the very fact that this is kind of consolidating, this is sitting higher than the 25, the 35, the 38, it tells you that it's getting less and less powerful for the hedges, less and less attractive for the hedges and the short sellers, especially the new ones, the iceberg, the auto, all of these guys, which came around maybe the 50s and the 60s. It's very, very dangerous for them to be sitting on short positions. So the only way out for them here is to either switch to a long position like we saw Citadel doing back when this thing was still sitting at 10, or cover. I mean, totally exit. And that's how we saw in, ignition buying pressure coming and sending us to maybe new highs. Now, to end this video, when I was talking about the fundamentals, AMC Entertainment will go bananas. This is an article from Benziga that popped out yesterday morning. And you can see they talk about the huge unimaginable amount of synthetics and naked shorts in here, and the volume going through dark pools, and look at the technicals and see there is still a very bullish sentiment coming to AMC, even though on the last week the tendency and the trend was mostly on the downside of things. But again, this is not even the real price of this stock, so why shouldn't you even care? The short interest shows us that they haven't covered, they are still have not covered, so it doesn't change anything. All right.